every human life when the mask finally slips. Not with a loud confession, not with a dramatic betrayal, but through small phrases spoken carelessly in ordinary moments. Words reveal what the heart tries to hide. A person can wear kindness like fine clothing, smile like an old friend, and stand beside you for years, yet a single sentence spoken at the wrong moment can uncover the truth of their spirit. Maya Angelou once taught the world that when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. And still, many of us ignore the warning signs because we hope people are better than they truly are. We excuse disrespect, we explain away manipulation, and we silence our intuition just to preserve peace. But wisdom begins the day you stop listening only to what people promise and start paying attention to the patterns hidden inside their words. Fake people may deceive the eyes for a season, but the tongue always tells the truth eventually. The phrases they repeat are not accidents, they are reflections of character. And once you learn to recognize them, you protect not only your peace, but also your future. There are people who wound others with a smile on their face. They throw sharp words like stones and then laugh as though pain itself were entertainment. And when the hurt reaches your eyes, when silence fills the room, and the truth of their cruelty begins to surface, they quickly retreat behind a familiar sentence, "I was just joking." But not every joke is innocent. Some jokes are carefully disguised attacks, wrapped in laughter, so the guilty can escape responsibility. The tongue reveals what the heart has been rehearsing in secret, and many people use humor not to connect, but to control. A sincere person does not enjoy humiliating another human being. A kind soul may tease gently, but there is warmth inside it, respect inside it, love inside it. Fake people are different. They study your insecurities quietly. They notice what hurts you, what embarrasses you, what weakens your confidence. Then one day, usually in front of others, they place those wounds on display and call it humor. They laugh loudly, hoping the crowd will laugh with them, because cruelty becomes easier when it has an audience. And if you react, if you defend your dignity, they immediately turn the blame toward you. Suddenly, you are too sensitive. Suddenly, your pain becomes the problem instead of their behavior. This is how manipulation survives in many relationships. It hides behind sarcasm, behind teasing, behind casual insults spoken with a grin. Some people understand that direct cruelty would expose them too quickly, so they disguise disrespect as comedy. It gives them power without accountability. They can say something deeply hurtful and still pretend innocence. But words do not lose their meaning simply because laughter follows them. A knife remains a knife, even when hidden inside a bouquet of flowers. Many people stay silent in these moments because they fear appearing weak. They force themselves to laugh along while something inside them quietly breaks. They tell themselves it is harmless. They convince themselves they are overreacting. But the spirit recognizes truth long before the mind accepts it. Your discomfort is not foolishness. Your heart notices when someone repeatedly finds pleasure in making you feel small. Real friendship does not require humiliation as proof of closeness. Real love does not entertain itself by damaging another person's confidence. Sometimes fake people test your boundaries through these jokes. They speak disrespectfully to see how much you will tolerate. Every time you excuse it, they push a little further. What begins as a small insult slowly becomes a pattern of emotional erosion. They chip away at your self-worth while maintaining the image of being harmless. And because they never speak with complete seriousness, they avoid consequences. This is why wisdom requires more than hearing words. It requires observing intention. Strong people learn not to ignore these moments. They understand that character is often revealed in what people think they can laugh about. Someone who truly respects you will protect your dignity even in humor. They will never use your pain as entertainment or your vulnerability as a performance. And when they accidentally hurt you, they will apologize sincerely instead of hiding behind excuses. Never feel ashamed for walking away from people who repeatedly disguise disrespect as jokes. Peace grows where respect lives. The moment someone enjoys embarrassing you more than uplifting you, they reveal something powerful about themselves. Believe what you see. Because fake people may hide behind laughter for a while, but eventually their jokes become confessions. There is a strange sadness that appears in some people when they can no longer control you. Not because you have become cruel, not because you have abandoned your values, but because you have finally learned the meaning of self-respect. The moment you begin protecting your peace, speaking with confidence, or refusing to tolerate behavior that once drained your spirit, certain people grow uncomfortable. And often the first thing they say is, "You've changed." At first, those words may sound harmless, even thoughtful, but hidden beneath them is sometimes disappointment that you are no longer as easy to manipulate as before. Growth has a way of exposing unhealthy relationships. The people who benefited from your silence rarely celebrate your voice. The ones who enjoyed your endless patience often become upset when boundaries appear. When you were constantly available, constantly forgiving, constantly sacrificing your own needs to keep everyone else comfortable, they called you kind. But the moment you begin valuing your own emotional well-being, they accuse you of becoming distant, selfish, or cold. What they truly miss is not the old you, but the version of you that accepted less than you deserved. Many toxic people depend on guilt as a form of control. They understand that kind-hearted individuals often fear disappointing others. So instead of respecting your growth, they make you feel ashamed for it. They speak as though your healing is betrayal. They remind you of who you used to be because that version was easier for them to influence. But there is nothing wrong with evolving. A tree does not apologize for growing taller. The ocean does not apologize for changing with the tide. Human beings are meant to grow beyond the pain that once kept them trapped. Sometimes the phrase, "you've changed," is spoken with bitterness because your transformation forces others to confront themselves. Your confidence becomes a mirror reflecting their insecurity. Your boundaries remind them of the access they no longer have, and rather than adjusting their behavior, they attempt to pull you backward emotionally. They romanticize the old days, not because those days were healthy, but because those days were convenient for them. There are people who become uncomfortable when they can no longer take advantage of your kindness. They miss the version of you that never said no, the version that carried emotional burdens in silence, the version that tolerated disrespect just to avoid conflict. But healing changes people. Pain teaches lessons that innocence could never understand. A person who has suffered enough eventually realizes that protecting their peace is not cruelty, it is survival. You must never allow guilt to become a prison that keeps you tied to unhealthy patterns. If becoming stronger makes certain people uncomfortable, let them be uncomfortable. Your responsibility is not to remain small so others can feel powerful. Your responsibility is to become whole. And sometimes wholeness requires disappointing those who benefited from your brokenness. Real friends, real love, and real-hearted people do not fear your growth. They celebrate it. They do not punish you for setting boundaries or shame you for becoming wiser. They recognize that change is part of life, and they honor the courage it takes to heal. Anyone who truly cares about you will want to see you become healthier, happier, and more secure within yourself. So when someone says, "You've changed," listen carefully to the spirit behind the words. Sometimes it is simple observation, but other times it is resistance to your freedom. And if your growth costs you relationships built on control, manipulation, or emotional exhaustion, then perhaps those relationships were never meant to grow with you in the first place. Trust is one of the most sacred gifts a human being can offer another. It cannot be forced, borrowed, or demanded into existence. It is built slowly through consistency, honesty, and the quiet evidence of repeated actions. Yet there are people who speak the words, "trust me," far more often than they demonstrate trustworthiness. They ask for your faith while giving you reasons to doubt them. They promise loyalty while behaving in ways that create confusion. And over time, you begin to realize that people who constantly beg to be trusted are often trying to outrun the truth their actions already revealed. A sincere person understands that trust is earned naturally. They do not pressure you into believing them because their character speaks before their mouth ever needs to. Their actions carry stability. Their words and behavior walk together in harmony. But fake people rely heavily on persuasion because they know consistency is missing from their behavior. They speak beautifully, confidently, even passionately, hoping their words will distract you from what your intuition already senses. And many people fall into this trap because they want to believe in goodness. They want to believe promises more than patterns. There is something deeply exhausting about relationships where words and actions constantly contradict one another. A person says they care about you, yet they disappear when you need support. They claim honesty matters, yet they hide things repeatedly. They speak of loyalty while betraying confidence behind closed doors. And every time their behavior creates pain, they return with the same sentence, "Trust me." But trust cannot survive in an environment where confusion is constant. Real trust brings peace, not anxiety. It creates clarity, not emotional chaos. Many manipulators understand the emotional power of language. They know that if they sound convincing enough, people may ignore the evidence standing directly in front of them. So they become skilled at making promises. They speak about the future with certainty. They reassure you repeatedly. They swear they would never hurt you. But words without action are like seeds thrown onto stone. Nothing real can grow from them. A person's character is never measured by what they say during comfortable moments. It is revealed by what they consistently do over time. Sometimes people demand trust because they want access without accountability. They want the benefits of loyalty without the responsibility of integrity. They become frustrated when you ask questions or notice inconsistencies. They may even accuse you of being paranoid or difficult simply because you pay attention. But wisdom is not paranoia. Discernment is not cruelty. Your spirit was not created to blindly ignore warning signs just to keep others comfortable. One of the hardest lessons in life is accepting that good words do not always come from good hearts. Some people know exactly what to say because they understand human emotions deeply. They know how to sound caring, supportive, and sincere. But eventually, time exposes everyone. Sooner or later, actions reveal what words attempted to hide. A promise repeated too often without proof eventually becomes empty noise. You must learn to trust patterns more than speeches. Watch how people behave when there is nothing to gain. Watch how they treat others when kindness is inconvenient. Watch whether their presence brings stability or confusion into your life. Because trustworthy people do not constantly demand your faith. They quietly earn it through consistency. And perhaps one of the greatest forms of self-respect is refusing to ignore what you clearly see. Stop allowing beautiful words to overpower honest observation. Believe actions, believe repeated behavior, believe the peace or pain someone consistently brings into your life. Fake people may master the art of sounding sincere, but time always exposes the distance between what is spoken and what is true. There are few things more damaging to the human spirit than being made to question your own reality. A lie can hurt, betrayal can wound, but when someone looks directly into your eyes and denies what you clearly heard, clearly felt, or clearly experienced, the confusion reaches deeper than ordinary pain. Fake people often protect themselves through denial because accountability threatens the image they work so hard to maintain. and one of their most powerful weapons is a simple phrase spoken with confidence. I never said that. At first, the moment feels small. You remember the conversation clearly. You remember the tone, the words, the discomfort that settled into your chest afterward. But suddenly the other person denies everything. They speak with such certainty that you begin doubting your own memory. You replay the moment in your mind again and again, wondering if perhaps you misunderstood. This is how emotional manipulation quietly begins. Not through obvious control, but through gradual confusion that weakens your trust in yourself. People who live honestly do not fear responsibility for their words. They may explain themselves, they may apologize, they may admit they spoke poorly in anger, but they do not rewrite reality simply to protect their pride. Fake people are different. Their image matters more than truth. They cannot tolerate being seen as wrong, careless, or hurtful, so they reshape the past to escape consequences. Instead of confronting what they said or did, they attempt to convince you that your perception is flawed. Over time, this behavior becomes emotionally exhausting. You begin keeping mental records of conversations because your reality is constantly challenged. You hesitate before expressing your feelings because you already expect denial. Even your confidence starts to erode. The mind grows tired when it is forced to defend its own experiences repeatedly. And this is exactly why such manipulation is dangerous. It does not only attack memory, it attacks self-trust. Some people deny their words because they fear losing control. If they admit the truth, they may have to face the pain they caused or accept responsibility for their actions. Denial becomes their shield. They twist conversations, change details, and redirect blame until the focus shifts away from them entirely. And often they do this so smoothly that others around you may not even notice. The manipulator appears calm while the wounded person appears emotional, and suddenly truth itself becomes difficult to defend. But wisdom teaches an important lesson. Confusion is often a sign that something unhealthy is happening. Genuine communication may involve disagreement, but it does not constantly leave you questioning your sanity. Real-hearted people seek understanding, not distortion. They care about clarity because they care about the relationship itself. Someone who values you will not repeatedly force you into emotional confusion just to preserve their ego. There comes a moment when you must stop seeking validation from people committed to misunderstanding you. You know what you experienced. You know what was said. And while memory is imperfect in all human beings, repeated denial in the face of obvious truth reveals more about the other person's character than it does about your perception. Trust yourself enough to recognize patterns. The human spirit becomes stronger the moment it stops surrendering its reality to those who manipulate truth. Your voice matters, your experiences matter, your memory deserves respect, and anyone who repeatedly twists reality to avoid accountability is showing you something important about their character. Listen carefully, because fake people may deny their words, but their patterns always speak louder than their excuses. Some of the most painful criticism in life does not arrive with anger. It arrives softly, wrapped in concern, dressed in kindness, and delivered with a smile. Fake people rarely reveal their judgment openly at first because they understand that cruelty is easier to accept when it sounds caring. So they approach you gently and say, "I'm only trying to help you." And while those words may appear harmless on the surface, sometimes hidden beneath them is not love, but control. Not guidance, but quiet disrespect disguised as wisdom. True help has a different spirit attached to it. Real guidance uplifts without humiliating. It corrects without destroying dignity. A sincere person wants to see you grow stronger, not smaller. But fake concern often leaves you feeling drained, ashamed, or inadequate. Instead of inspiring confidence, it slowly chips away at your self-worth. The conversation begins to feel less like support and more like judgment wearing a friendly face. There are people who position themselves as advisors in your life, not because they genuinely care about your well-being, but because criticizing you gives them a sense of superiority. They constantly point out your flaws, your mistakes, your weaknesses, and your imperfections, all while claiming it is for your own good. They speak as though they alone understand what is best for you. And little by little, if you are not careful, you begin to see yourself through their eyes instead of your own. One of the most dangerous things about hidden judgment is that it creates confusion. Because the words sound caring, you hesitate to trust your discomfort. You tell yourself they mean well. You convince yourself you should be grateful for their honesty. But your spirit notices what your mind tries to ignore. Genuine support leaves room for your humanity. Manipulative criticism leaves you constantly feeling inadequate. Some fake people cannot tolerate the confidence of others because it reminds them of what they lack within themselves. So instead of building others up, they subtly weaken them. They disguise envy as advice. They disguise control as protection. They become experts at planting doubt while pretending to offer wisdom. A person may criticize your dreams, your appearance, your choices, your personality, or your ambitions, all while insisting they are only helping. But help that consistently damages your peace is not help at all. There's a difference between correction rooted in love and criticism rooted in insecurity. Loving correction is honest but compassionate. It seeks growth, not humiliation. It recognizes your value even while addressing your mistakes. Hidden judgment, however, often carries a quiet pleasure in making you feel small. It repeatedly focuses on what is wrong with you, while rarely celebrating what is right. And over time, this can become emotionally suffocating. Many people remain trapped in these dynamics because they fear appearing ungrateful. They accept constant criticism simply because it is delivered politely. But politeness does not always equal kindness. Some of the coldest hearts speak in the softest voices. Wisdom requires learning to observe how people make you feel consistently, not just how pleasant their words sound in isolated moments. Healthy relationships allow space for encouragement, growth, and mutual respect. They do not revolve around one person constantly positioning themselves above the other. Real friends and genuine souls do not need to weaken your confidence to feel valuable. They celebrate your strengths while helping you through your weaknesses with compassion and sincerity. Never ignore the difference between someone helping you rise and someone quietly enjoying your self-doubt. Your spirit deserves relationships where honesty and respect walk together. And when criticism consistently leaves you feeling broken instead of empowered, listen carefully. Because fake people often hide their judgment behind concern, but eventually their words reveal the true intention living underneath. There are people who never attack you alone. They borrow invisible crowds to strengthen their words. Instead of speaking honestly from their own feelings, they hide behind phrases like, "Everyone thinks the same about you," or "People have been talking." And in that moment, the conversation is no longer just between two individuals. Suddenly, it feels as though the whole world is judging you. This is one of the oldest manipulation tactics in human relationships, using imaginary voices to create fear, insecurity, and self-doubt. The power of this tactic lies in isolation. Human beings naturally care about belonging. We are emotional creatures, shaped by connection, community, and acceptance. Fake people understand this deeply. They know that if they can convince you that others secretly dislike you, disapprove of you, or speak badly about you, they can weaken your confidence without needing evidence. Fear begins growing inside your mind. You start wondering who can truly be trusted. You begin replaying conversations, questioning your behavior, and shrinking yourself to avoid further judgment. But truly sincere people speak for themselves. They do not gather invisible crowds to support their opinions. A mature person says, "I feel this way," instead of hiding behind vague statements about what everyone supposedly believes. Fake people often use imaginary groups because they lack the courage to stand honestly in their own emotions. By claiming others agree with them, they try to make their criticism appear undeniable and powerful. Sometimes there is no everyone at all. Sometimes it is only one insecure person projecting their own negativity outward. But they understand that criticism sounds heavier when it appears collective. One opinion may be questioned, but the illusion of many opinions creates pressure. And so they speak as though the world itself has reached a verdict about you. This is not communication rooted in honesty. It is emotional intimidation. Many people become trapped by these words because they fear rejection more than they trust themselves. They begin changing their personality just to satisfy invisible expectations. They silence their voice, hide their dreams, soften their confidence, and apologize for qualities that once made them unique. Little by little, manipulation steals authenticity. The person becomes more focused on avoiding criticism than living truthfully. There is also cruelty hidden inside vague accusations. When someone says, "People don't like you," but refuses to name who, when, or why, they create confusion impossible to resolve. You cannot defend yourself against shadows. You cannot heal misunderstandings built on unnamed sources and invisible conversations. And often, that is exactly the point. Manipulators prefer ambiguity because it keeps you emotionally unstable. Wise people learn not to surrender their peace to rumors, assumptions, or faceless opinions. Not every voice deserves authority over your spirit. The truth is that no human being is loved by everyone, understood by everyone, or accepted by everyone. Trying to satisfy every opinion is a battle that destroys self-worth. Your purpose in life is not to become small enough for universal approval. Your purpose is to live honestly, kindly, and courageously. Real-hearted people address concerns directly and respectfully. They do not weaponize public opinion to control others emotionally. They seek understanding, not fear. Anyone who constantly reminds you of what others supposedly think may be revealing more about their own insecurity than about your character. And perhaps one of the greatest freedoms in life is learning that your value cannot be determined by whispers, gossip, or imaginary crowds. Fake people use fear to make you doubt yourself because confident people are harder to control. But when you stop living for approval, their words lose power. The noise fades, and truth becomes easier to hear. Few things are more painful than being hurt by someone and then being told that your pain itself is the problem. You gather the courage to express what wounded you, hoping for understanding, honesty, or even a simple moment of compassion. And instead, you hear the familiar phrase, "You're too sensitive." In that instant, the conversation changes completely. The focus is no longer on the disrespect, the cruelty, or the careless behavior that caused the pain. Suddenly, attention is shifted onto your emotional reaction, as though your feelings are the true mistake. Fake people often use this phrase because it allows them to escape responsibility without ever examining their own actions. If they can convince you that your emotions are exaggerated, then they never have to confront the damage they caused. It becomes easier for them to dismiss your experience than to reflect on their own behavior. And over time, repeated dismissal creates something dangerous inside a person: shame for feeling human. There is a difference between emotional honesty and emotional weakness. Every human being feels hurt, disappointment, sadness, and frustration. Emotions are not signs of failure, they are signs of life. A compassionate soul understands this. Real-hearted people may not always agree with your perspective, but they do not mock your feelings simply because those feelings make them uncomfortable. They listen, they seek understanding, they recognize that emotions deserve respect even when conversation